The VTC of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is the situation in the Middle East. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representatives of the Syrian Arab Republic and Turkey to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu, High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I wish to draw the attention of Council members to document S/2021/200, a letter dated 26 February 2021 from the Secretary General addressed to the President of the Security Council. I now give the floor to Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, distinguished members of the Security Council, it is my pleasure to once again brief the Security Council on the implementation of the Council Resolution 2118 on the elimination of the chemical weapons program of the Syrian Arab Republic. The Office for Disarmament Affairs has continued to maintain regular contact with counterparts at the OPCW on its activities related to this matter. In that context, per established practice, I held a monthly call with the OPCW Director General on Tuesday, 2nd of March, to receive an update and ascertain his views. The Office for Disarmament Affairs also received information from the permanent mission of the Syrian Arab Republic concerning chemical issues for this period. This information was studied carefully and also forwarded to the OPCW Technical Secretariat. Madam President, I would like to note that since I last briefed the Council 1 month ago, there have been limited developments in the implementation of Security Council Resolution 2118. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to impact the OPCW's ability to deploy to the Syrian Arab Republic. However, the OPCW Technical Secretariat maintains constant readiness for deployments, which are being conducted subject to the evolution of the pandemic. Despite these conditions, the Technical Secretariat has continued with its mandated activities related to the elimination of the Syrian chemical weapons program and its engagement with the Syrian Arab Republic in this regard. The OPCW Declaration Assessment Team, or DAT, deployed to the Syrian Arab Republic from 7th to 25th February 2021 for the 24th round of consultations. I have been advised that the results of this deployment will be reported to the OPCW Technical Secretariat to the Executive Council in due course. I would like to reiterate my appreciation for the Declaration Assessment Team, who just returned to The Hague, continuing efforts to clarify all outstanding issues regarding the Syrian Arab Republic's initial declaration to the OPCW, despite the COVID-19 pandemic-related challenges. Madam President, as reported by the OPCW Director General, 19 declaration-related issues remain outstanding. One of the outstanding issues pertains to a chemical weapons production facility that was declared by the Syrian National Authority as never having been used for the production of chemical weapons. However, analysis of all the information and other materials gathered by the DAT since 2014 indicates that production and/or weaponization of chemical warfare nerve agents did in fact take place at this facility. Consequently, the OPCW Technical Secretariat has requested the Syrian Arab Republic to declare the exact types and quantities of chemical agents produced and/or weaponized at this site. The OPCW Technical Secretariat that the Syrian National Authority has yet to respond to this request. As a result of the identified gaps, inconsistencies, and discrepancies that remain unresolved, the OPCW Technical Secretariat continues to assess that, at this stage, the declaration submitted by the Syrian Arab Republic cannot be considered accurate and complete in accordance with the Chemical Weapons Convention. I would like to remind Council members that efforts to resolve these outstanding issues have now been ongoing since 2014. As it has been noted on many occasions, the confidence of the international community in the complete elimination of Syria's chemical weapons program depends upon these issues being finalized. I therefore reiterate my call to the Syrian Arab Republic to cooperate fully with the OPCW Technical Secretariat in that regard. Madam President, the OPCW Technical Secretariat conducted the 7th round of inspections at the Barza and Jamraya facilities of the Syrian Scientific Studies and Research Center, or SSRC, between 8 and 13 November 2020. I understand that the samples collected during these inspections were split at the OPCW laboratory in the presence of a representative of the Syrian Arab Republic and sent to designated laboratories for analysis. I look forward to the findings of this round of inspections that will be reported to the OPCW Executive Council in due course. I also understand that the Syrian Arab Republic has yet to provide sufficient technical information or explanations that will enable the OPCW Technical Secretariat to close the issue related to the findings of a Schedule 2 chemical detected at the Barza facilities of the SSRC during the 3rd round of inspections in 2018. I note that the OPCW fact-finding mission related to allegations of the use of chemical weapons in the Syrian Arab Republic and continues its engagement with the Syrian government and other states parties to the Chemical Weapons Convention with regard to a variety of incidents. As previously reported, further FFM deployments will be subject to the evolution of the COVID-19 pandemic. I have also been advised that the Investigation and Identification Team, or IIT, continues its investigations into incidents in which the FFM has determined that chemical weapons were used or likely used in the Syrian Arab Republic and will issue further reports in due course. I take this opportunity to once again underscore my full support for the integrity, professionalism, impartiality, objectivity, and independence of the work of the OPCW. With regard to the inspections mandated by paragraph 8 of Executive Council Decision EC 94/Decision 2, entitled Addressing the Possession and Use of Chemical Weapons by the Syrian Arab Republic, the OPCW Technical Secretariat continues to monitor the security situation and will inform the Syrian Arab Republic when it is prepared to deploy for this purpose. Moving forward, I have been advised that the main focus for future activities of the OPCW mission in the Syrian Arab Republic will remain related to, in no particular order of priority, the fact-finding mission, the implementation of Council decisions EC 83/Decision 5 and EC 81/Decision 4, including declaration related issues, the inspections at the Barza and Jamraya facilities of the SSRC, and the implementation of Conference Decision CSS4/Decision 3 of Council Decision EC 94/Decision 2. Madam President, distinguished members of the Security Council, the use of chemical weapons is a profound threat to peace and security, as well as to the disarmament and non-proliferation architecture that was so painstakingly constructed over past decades. There is no justification for the use of chemical weapons by anyone, anywhere, and under any circumstances. Those who have used them must be identified and held to account. It is my sincere hope that members of this Council will unite on this issue. Before closing, I wish to echo the Secretary General's remarks at the Munich Security Conference segment on priorities for delivered on 19th of February 2021. Now is the time for solidarity and international cooperation to tackle our even bigger and more complex challenges. I am convinced that if we are determined, we can achieve our shared goals. I thank you very much for your attention.
I thank Ms. Nakamitsu for her briefing. And I would like to draw the attention of speakers to paragraph 22, note 507, which encourages all participants in council meetings to deliver their statements in 5 minutes or less, in line with the Security Council's commitment to making more efficient use of our open meeting. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as a Thank you to the High Representative for your insightful and thorough briefing this morning. We greatly appreciate your sober analysis and clear calls for accountability. Colleagues, as I prepared for today's discussion, I was struck by the magnitude of the atrocities committed by the Assad regime. After 10 years of civil war, tens of thousands of innocent civilians are now dead, and far too many of them were slain with Assad's lethal, horrific chemical weapons. The use of chemical weapons by any state constitutes an unacceptable threat to every state. We all know and understand this, and the United States remains committed to holding those who use these horrific weapons to account. We all know the Assad regime has repeatedly used chemical weapons. So why haven't the Syrian government been held accountable? The answer is sadly simple. The Assad regime has tried to avoid accountability by obstructing independent investigations and undermining the role and work of the OPCW. And the regime's ally, in particular Russia, have also sought to block all efforts to pursue accountability. Russia has defended the Assad regime despite its chemical weapons attacks. It has attacked the professional work of the OPCW. And it has undermined efforts to hold the Assad regime accountable for its use of chemical weapons and numerous other atrocities. The United States firmly supports the impartial and independent work of the OPCW. We recognize their leadership, and we commend the professional manner in which the organization carries out its mission. We eagerly anticipate future reports from the investigation and identification team. The IIT's first report, released last April, concluded Syria used chemical weapons in March 2017 during 3 separate attacks. The OPCW Executive Council, in response, adopted a decision in July of last year asking Syria to take measures to redress the situation. Unsurprisingly, as reported by the OPCW Director General in October, Syria failed to complete any of the measures set forth in the decision. Unsurprising, but unacceptable. In response to this failure to comply, the United States, along with 45 co-sponsors from across the world, have submitted a draft decision to the OPCW Conference of the State Parties. We call upon the conference to take appropriate action when it reconvenes in April to send an unequivocal message to Assad's regime that the use of chemical weapons has real and serious consequences. Let me remind everyone that we already agreed as a united council to stop the use of chemical weapons in Syria. In 2013, the Security Council decided in Resolution 2118 that the Assad regime shall not use, develop, produce, otherwise acquire, stockpile, or retain chemical weapons. The Council further decided that the Assad regime must cooperate fully with the OPCW and the UN. We must not decision. The Security Council must ensure that there are serious consequences for the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons. The United States supports these and other efforts to hold the Assad regime responsible for the use of chemical weapons and other ongoing atrocities against the Syrian people. The horrific list includes mass detention, torture, and attacks destroying civilian infrastructure. Accountability will bring long overdue justice to the victims and their families who need and deserve the international community's support. Accountability is also vital to build confidence in the broader political process, as called for in Resolution 2254, to bring lasting stability and peace to Syria. It is time for the Assad regime to uphold its obligations under the Chemical Weapons Convention and Resolution 2118. The regime has acted with impunity for far too long. The truth is, we have obligations too. We have an obligation to hold those who use weapons of mass destruction accountable. We have an obligation to listen to the OPCW, whose integrity is unimpeachable and whose objective technical expertise does not deserve to be politicized. And most important, we have a global responsibility, a sacred responsibility to protect our people from the inhumanity of chemical weapons. Colleagues, very few issues would unite all nations, but the horror of chemical weapons must remain one of them. We cannot let that norm disintegrate. We cannot give up on the dream of a world free from these weapons of mass destruction. So we ask that the Security Council unite once more. Let us put aside short-term political calculations. Let us finally put the needs of the Syrian people and of all people first. And let us place the use of chemical weapons where it belongs, in the dustbin of history. Thank you very much. I resume my function as President of the Council, and I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, distinguished Madam President. First and foremost, I would like to say that we have taken note of your reference to the note of the 507, but I'd like to point out that that note is not a Security Council resolution, and the provisions it contains are not binding, rather they are recommendations. Naturally, we must be brief. Brevity is of the utmost importance, as we know, but in some situations that is not always possible. Nonetheless, Madam President, given that today presents the first opportunity for you to delve into the discussion of the Syrian chemical case in the Council, I will, if you'll allow me, provide a brief, but I'm sure very useful overview of the history of this topic and its discussions in this Council. Syria voluntarily joined the OPCW under Russia's instigation, it complied with the initial declaration under the Chemical Weapons Convention and weapons stockpiles. In 2014, the Syrian chemical warfare program was fully shut down, chemical weapons stockpiles were eliminated, facilities were destroyed. The OPCW repeatedly confirmed this. Since then, Syria has fully complied with and cooperated with the OPCO, its technical secretariat, including the declaration assessment team, as well as with all investigative missions on the ground. I would like to particularly note that the fact-finding mission was invited at Syria's own initiative. Unfortunately, the hopes that all this would help to leave behind accusations against the leadership of the Syrian Arab Republic regarding the use of chemical weapons against its own population were not realized. Throughout all of these years, a number of states continue to use the chemical card as an instrument to exert pressure on the Syrian government. Time and time again, they launch extremely serious accusations against Damascus, citing unconvincing evidence, such as videos from social networks or testimony from knowingly biased witnesses, or even crudely fabricating facts. Meanwhile, any counter-arguments provided not only by the Syrian Arab Republic and Russia, but by a number of independent experts and organizations are roundly rejected by them without any sort of clear explanation. The OPCW technical secretariat has unfortunately taken on the role of simply repeating the anti-Syrian sentiments of Western states, and practically from the very beginning began to rubber stamp reports in line with that position. The evidential base for this has always been lacking full of technical inconsistencies that often contradict all laws of physics and logic. There have been shells falling into ventilation shafts, somehow matching their diameter perfectly, or unguided bombs, instead of free falling, magically hit targets that were as far as 5 kilometers away, or white helmets collected sarin samples practically with their bare hands. The technical secretariat is not even trying to hold up the appearance of complying with normal practices and procedures for collecting evidence, including the principle of the chain of custody. And when certain free thinkers in the ranks of its staff sounded the alarm and began to refuse to participate in direct forgery, the leadership of the technical secretariat resorted to repressions, intimidations, distortion of facts, and repressed dissenters in every way possible. As a result, the amount of evidence of direct fabrication, manipulation, and internal irregularities within the technical secretariat has passed the critical point. The more glaring examples of this are egregious irregularities in the investigation of the incidents in Han Sheikhoun in April 2017 and in Duma in April 2018. I urge anyone who is interested in forming an objective view on that subject to study the materials provided by independent experts, Mr. Postel and Mr. Mate, during the ARIA formula meeting on September 28th of last year. We disseminated those as official documents of the Security Council and the General Assembly. I also ask you to take note of the testimony of the former OPCW inspector who directly participated in the Duma investigation, Jan Henderson, regarding the fact that the technical secretariat leadership fudged the conclusions on the use of chemical weapons in Syria following direct pressure from Western countries. I won't go into detail regarding the activity of the investigation and identification team, which is illegitimate in and of itself because its establishment was pushed through in the Executive Council in violation of the principle of consensus and of the Chemical Weapons Convention. It is therefore unsurprising that its final products don't stand up to criticism due to their political bias, factual unreliability, and technical incompetence. We have already stated our detailed position and our arguments regarding the IIT report on the Al Latema incident in 2017 have been disseminated as official documents of the Security Council back in June of last year. We would not be surprised in the least if in the near future new made-to-order pseudo-revelations of the IIT emerge, which would be just as unconvincing as the Al Latema report. This is similar to a new book coming out in a series that readers are already very tired of. It's not going to cause any sensation here now. However, the efforts and endeavors of the IIT are just the tip of the iceberg. The root of the problem is that the Syrian chemical case has long become an instrument for our Western colleagues, which they use to punish the undesirable authorities in Damascus. So it's useless to seek any connection to the use or non-use of chemical weapons in them. This is directly evident when we examine the draft accusatory anti-Syrian decision of the Executive Council of the OPCW. That decision was adopted by the Executive Council with the minimally required number of voices in July of last year. It requires the Syrian Arab Republic to do something that is impossible, to declare allegedly remaining chemical weapons and related facilities, which it simply does not possess. Of course, Syria was unable to comply with that ultimatum. As a result, our Western colleagues are now trying to initiate a process to strip it of its rights in the OPCW. We hope that the majority of delegations at the Conference of State Parties in April will refuse to participate in this provocation, and the repressive decision initiated by Western countries will not pass. It is, after all, completely clear that there's absolutely nothing unusual in the Syrian chemical weapons case in general, and the initial declaration in particular exists. Nothing that would require such steps. During the last meeting, we already noted that the dialogue between Damascus and the OPCW on these issues is absolutely normal and routine. The very same nuances in the context of the initial declarations had to be addressed by a number of states, including Western states. I won't keep expounding on this topic, although there is a wealth of examples of using the technical secretariat to advance the above-mentioned political agenda, and there's more and more evidence of this. They have already dealt a fatal blow to the reputation of the OPCW as an international organization. And I expect new accusations against us to be heard in statements from our Western colleagues in an example to erode and undermine the authority of the OPCW. Those accusations have no basis. Russia, on the contrary, is fighting to restore the good name of that organization and trying to get its Director General, Fernando Arias, to answer questions that are on everyone's mind. In conclusion, Madam President, I would like to stop here and draw your attention to the fact that with the arrival in New York of the new permanent representative of the Syrian Arab Republic, His Excellency Bassam Sabaga, who for many years represented Syria in the OPCW and who possesses exhaustive expertise when it comes to all the nuances of Syria's interaction with that entity. The Council now has an excellent opportunity to obtain information about the real situation regarding the Syrian chemical weapons file firsthand. And this includes progress regarding closing issues related to chemical weapons in Syria that were achieved in Hague. He is the best person to speak about this. There can be no better person, and I call on you to pay very close attention to his statement at the end of our meeting. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement, and I now call on the representative of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Thank you, Madam President, and I thank High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, Ms. Nakamitsu, for her briefing. Vincent and the Grenadines' well-established principled position that the use of chemical weapons anywhere by anyone and under any circumstances constitutes a reprehensible violation of international law. Impunity for chemical weapons atrocities should not be encouraged through inaction. Accordingly, allegations of the use of chemical weapons must never be dismissed, and investigation should always be comprehensive and capable of withstanding scrutiny. In this regard, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons plays a critical role and bears the tremendous responsibility and effective implementation of the Chemical Weapons Convention. All activities of the organization and its subsidiary bodies must therefore be characterized by transparency, impartiality, and non-politicization for it to remain fit for purpose and an effective multilateral body. We remain supportive of its mandates and all efforts aimed at strengthening its capacity to make certain that the quality of its work remains of the highest standard. We continue to encourage dialogue between the OPCW Technical Secretariat and the Syrian National Authority to resolve the gaps, inconsistencies, and discrepancies in the initial declaration. We recognize the efforts by both parties thus far, notwithstanding the impediments created by the global pandemic, and we urge them to maintain the constructive engagement. On this point, we take note of the deployment of the Declaration Assessment Team to conduct the 24th round of consultation. We look forward to receiving the results of this deployment as well as all other pending reports. Despite the many divergent views, cooperation must be fostered and sustained to make tangible progress in every aspect of this file and to ensure the full implementation of Resolution 2118. In this context, we restate the importance of OPCW member states pursuing consensus-based decisions to thwart further polarization. The Security Council and the OPCW Technical Secretariat ought not to overlook the many notifications by the Syrian government regarding the preparations by armed groups to fabricate incidents of the use of chemical weapons. This is indeed concerning, and we have an obligation to give this matter due attention to make an objective assessment. In order, we should always keep the collective goal of achieving a world free of chemical weapons at the forefront and remain steadfast in preserving the norm against chemical weapons. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I now give the floor to the representative of Estonia.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Izumi, for your briefing. March 2021 marks the civil war. 10 years ago, when tens of thousands of Syrians came peacefully to the streets to protest against corruption and demand respect for their basic human rights, there was hope for political reforms and transformation. Assad regime's violent crackdown on the peaceful anti-government protests, but turned it into one of the most deadly and destructive conflicts in recent history. About 500,000 people have been killed, many more injured, maimed, and tortured. Millions have been displaced and their homes destroyed. One of the defining features of the Syrian conflict has been the repeated and systematic deployment of chemical weapons against civilian populations. We have seen this happening in Ghouta, Douma, Sardin, and elsewhere. Syrian regime's responsibility for chemical weapons use has been confirmed by independent UN and OPCW investigative mechanisms on 7 separate occasions. Additionally, JIM confirmed their use by ISIL. Estonia has full trust in the independent, impartial of the OPCW Technical Secretariat, its investigative bodies, and in the credibility of their reports. There is no justification for the use of chemical weapons by anyone, anywhere, and under any circumstances. It is imperative to hold accountable all those who have used these arms, oftentimes against defenseless children, women, and men. We owe it to the victims, to every and each one of them. We need it to heal the country and build peace in Syria. We need accountability to maintain credibility of the norm against chemical weapons. Regrettably, so far all attempts in the Council to move towards accountability have been blocked by a veto. It is encouraging to see, however, that first criminal inquiries with regard to the use of chemical weapons in Syria have reached courts in Germany and France. There is still hope for justice. Madam President, gaps, inconsistencies, and discrepancies remain in the Syrian declaration. The persistent lack of cooperation on the part of Syria means that we do not have clarity on its chemical weapons stockpiles and production facilities. The situation continues to pose threat to international peace and security. We hope that once the OPCW Conference of State Parties resumes in April, it will take appropriate action to address the violations of Chemical Weapons Convention by Syria. Madam President, Estonia continues to stand up for international law and the fundamental principles of human rights. Today, 3 years ago, Sergei Skripal and his daughter were poisoned with Novichok chemical nerve agent in Salisbury, the United Kingdom. The same poison was used again in August last year in an attempt to assassinate Russian politician Alexei Navalny. We condemn in the strongest terms targeted killings of those who dare to speak out against the government and criticize the ruling regime. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Estonia for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Ireland.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam President, and I want to thank the Undersecretary General Nakamitsu for her briefing today. Good to see her with us. Madam President, once again, Ireland unequivocally condemns any use of chemical weapons at any time and anywhere. As the instances of their use in Syria and elsewhere make clear, they have a devastating and indiscriminate impact on their victims and on the communities. We must act together to uphold the established global norm against the use of these appalling weapons. Today, Madam President, I want to make 3 points. First, Ireland is unwavering in its view that the role of the OPCW is crucial in addressing the possession and use of chemical weapons. For us, it represents an essential and effective part of the global disarmament and non-proliferation architecture. It serves to protect all of our interests, and I'd like to underline, including those of the people of Syria, in ensuring the global elimination of chemical weapons. We're seriously concerned, therefore, by the ongoing efforts to question the professionalism and impartiality of the OPCW Technical Secretariat and its investigation mechanisms. In our view, this risks lasting damage to this vital organisation and undermines the multilateral approach to disarmament and non-proliferation, which is enshrined in the Chemical Weapons Convention. In the case of Syria, the OPCW, through the JIM and the IIT, has provided factual, evidence-based and impartial conclusions on numerous reported instances of chemical weapons use in Syria, where evidence was insufficient to come to a conclusion. It's also been clear where evidence points to use by terrorist groups. OPCW has on 7 occasions to date found that the evidence warrants attribution of use to Syrian authorities. Given the OPCW's technical expertise and experience as well as its mandate, we don't believe that we here should seek to second guess these findings. Rather, the international community and this council in particular should act urgently, in unity, to address the issue of this documented use of chemical weapons in Syria. My second point is that we remain deeply concerned by the gaps and the inconsistencies in Syria's initial declaration. These are particularly important given the documented repeated use of chemical weapons by the Syrian authorities since 2013. These inconsistencies by Syria have increased in number and in substance over the past 7 years. Overall, this paints an unfortunate picture of evasion by Syria, with an ongoing effort to avoid obligations under the Chemical Weapons Convention, OPCW Executive Council decisions, and Resolution 2118. We note the recent consultations between the Declaration Assessment Team and Syria, which took place in February, the 7th to the 25th, and we really hope to hear a progress made in addressing the 19 outstanding issues under Syria's declaration. Again, we have to be really clear. The Syrian authorities bear the responsibility to answer these issues. And I would today again urge the Syrian authorities to cooperate actively, openly, and in good faith with the OPCW. My last point really is that in responding to the findings of the FFM and the IIT on the use of chemical weapons force in Latamina in March 2017, the OPCW Executive Council set out clear actions for Syria to take to return to compliance with the CWC. Ireland deeply regrets that Syria chose not to act on these. We would again today urge Syria to act immediately to comply with this decision. Given these circumstances, Madam President, Ireland has supported the decision put to the Conference of State Parties to the CWC for its meeting in April. In the absence of any action on the part of the Syrian authorities to meet the international community's concerns, we believe that the Conference on State Parties must take all appropriate actions to address Syria's non-compliance. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Ireland for her statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of India.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to thank Undersecretary General and High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, Izumi Nakamitsu, for her briefing. We have taken note of the monthly report submitted by DG OPCW on the progress in the elimination of the Syrian chemical weapons program, which provides information about activities of the OPCW in implementing Security Council Resolution 2118, as well as the activities of its fact-finding mission, declaration assessment team, and investigation and identification team. We are encouraged to learn that the 24th round of consultations between the declaration assessment team and the relevant Syrian authorities took place from 7th to 25th February 2021. We hope that these consultations will help in addressing the reported gaps and inconsistencies in the declaration. We have also taken note of the extension of the tripartite agreement among the OPCW, Syria, and UNOPS. We hope that this 6-month extension agreement will be signed soon. India has provided a financial contribution of $1 million to the OPCW Trust Fund for activities relating to the destruction of chemical stockpiles and related facilities in Syria. We believe that the continued engagement and cooperation between Syria and the OPCW Technical Secretariat is critical for the early resolution of all outstanding issues. India has consistently underlined the need for an impartial and objective investigation into any alleged use of chemical weapons, scrupulously following the provisions and procedures laid down in the convention. Any concerns or differences should be addressed on the basis of consultations among all concerned parties. In our view, politicization of the issue will result in parties taking extreme positions, jeopardizing ongoing efforts towards resolution. Madam President, whether it is alleged use of chemical weapons, humanitarian issues, or political processes, we need greater efforts for seeking congruence of positions, both within the Council and beyond, to see meaningful, tangible progress on ground in Syria. India is willing to work with other like-minded delegations towards fostering unity in the Council on all issues concerning Syria. As one of the worst sufferers of the scourge of terrorism, India continues to call on the Council to remain cognizant at all times of the dangers of weapons of mass destruction falling into the hands of terrorist groups. We have consistently underlined the need for preventing terrorist groups from taking advantage of the decade-long conflict in Syria and entrenching themselves, thereby posing a threat to the entire region. Reports of the resurgence of ISIS in the region are being heard with increasing frequency. The SG's latest report on the threat posed by ISIL-Daesh alludes to the incubation of terrorist threat in displacement camps and detention facilities in the northeast of Syria. Undoubtedly, the role of certain players in the Syrian conflict has re-energized terrorist activities in the region. India has consistently called for a comprehensive and peaceful resolution of the Syrian conflict through a Syrian-led dialogue, taking into account the legitimate aspirations of the people of Syria. We have also contributed to the return of normalcy and rebuilding of Syria through humanitarian assistance and human resource development, most recently through the delivery of 2,000 metric ton of rice in February. We have also called on all parties to not link the humanitarian and developmental work with the progress on the political track. We stand ready to work with humanitarian relief agencies led by OCHA and UNDP in devising a suitable vaccination relief program for the country and West Asia as a whole. Let me conclude by reiterating our support for efforts towards attaining lasting, durable peace in Syria. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of India for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Mexico.
Thank you, Madam President. Mexico would like to thank the High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, Ms. Nakamitsu, for her report in compliance with Resolution 2118. We reserve the right to make additional comments during consultations, but I would now like to highlight the following 3 points. Firstly, we recognize some elements of progress in cooperation by Syria. However, given the existence of incomplete or contradictory information on the use of chemical weapons, my delegation believes that the technical and impartial determination on this case is a matter for the OPCW, along with the special mechanisms which were set up in order to shed light on events and identify perpetrators in Syria. We believe that these inquiries must continue to move forward. Secondly, the Chemical Weapons Convention and its monitoring body are among the most robust and effective of all of the disarmament treaties and regimes. Universal international monitoring obligations and verification system represent the optimum standard in verification, the so-called golden rule. Thirdly, holding to this self-same conviction in the General Assembly, my delegation voted in favor of the resolution on cooperation between the United Nations and the OPCW. We believe that the strong support received by that resolution reflects the advisability and the importance of the relationship and cooperation between both organizations must be further strengthened. My country reiterates its appeal to Syria to continue to cooperate with the OPCW and to move forward on pending issues. Diplomatic dialogue and peaceful solution of disputes in accordance with the UN Charter and international law is the only way forward. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Mexico for her statement, and I now give the floor to the representative from France.
Madam President, I thank Ms. Nakamitsu for her briefing. We have to look at the situation squarely. No progress has been made. The Syrian regime is still lying, hiding the truth, and evading its international obligations. The initial declaration is incomplete. More than 7 years have passed now since the adoption of Resolution 2118 remain pending, and among these, there is a non-declared production site on which the regime has provided no information. To claim that the matter is closed is to deny the evidence. In this situation, we look forward to the results of the mission on the ground carried out by the initial declaration assessment team in February. I'm not going to go into the game. Everyone knows that it has carried out ignoble acts and that it should be brought to account for them. This is why France is very attentive, or will be, to the conclusions of the reports coming from the identification and investigation team. The regime has not carried out any of the actions that were expected of it. France, with its partners, will draw the appropriate conclusions. Thus, last November, we submitted to the OPCW Technical Secretariat a draft decision on behalf of 46 delegations. The aim behind this was to deprive the regime of its voting rights. This initiative has only one objective: ensuring that Syria finally meets its international obligations. I'd like to hail the work that the OPCW is doing rigorously and independently. I deplore the unfounded accusations that are being levelled at it. They are undignified, and above all, they're irresponsible. The Security Council has a historic responsibility for the non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. The re-emergence of chemical weapons in the world is a major threat. We mustn't allow these weapons to become commonplace. They should remain a taboo. The OPCW is a pillar of our collective security, and it is incumbent on us to protect it. In conclusion, I'd like to stress the need to fight impunity. At the beginning of this week, survivors of a chemical weapons attack brought a case in France against members of the Syrian regime for war crimes and crimes against humanity. This case has a simple message behind it. Criminals will not get away with it. Evidence is still being collected and it will be used. These are the messages that we reiterated in the General Assembly on Monday, and that we defend alongside our partners within the International Partnership Against Impunity Use of Chemical Weapons. Thank you very much, Madam President.
I thank the representative of France for his statement, and I now turn the floor to the representative of Norway.
Thank you, President. I would also like to thank the High Representative for Disarmament, Mrs. Nakamitsu, for her briefing. The Council meets every month to discuss this issue of utmost importance. I regret to know, however, that the lack of progress towards full disarmament of serious chemical weapons program make us repeat ourselves. This month marks the 10 years since the start of the conflict in Syria. The sheer length of the conflict does not make the issue any less relevant or mean that we should stop discussing it. On the contrary, the lack of accountability and the deterioration of trust reminds us of the importance and the urgency of the issue. Yet, the monthly report from the OPCW on progress in the elimination of the Syrian chemical weapons program once again states clearly that there is no progress. Again, 19 of the 22 issues from Syria's initial declaration remain outstanding. We do, however, note that the declaration assessment team has been deployed to Syria in February for its 24th round of consultation. We look forward to hearing their findings as soon as possible. Again, we urge the Syrian Arab Republic to cooperate fully with the OPCW and resolve all outstanding issues from its initial declaration. I would also repeat that Norway remains aligned with the European Union's restrictive measures on persons and entities involved in the development and use of chemical weapons. President, let me also reiterate our full confidence in the OPCW and its technical secretariat. Norway firmly rejects attempts to discredit or bring into disrepute the OPCW and the work of the technical secretariat. The use of chemical weapons in Syria contravenes international law, and accountability for those responsible must be ensured. It is untenable that no one has been held accountable for these actions. We deeply regret needing to come back to the Council month after month to repeat this call, yet we will continue to do so until progress is made. The Syrian Arab Republic must fulfill its obligation in accordance with the Chemical Weapons Convention. Those responsible must be held accountable through credible national or international criminal justice mechanisms. And the issue must be addressed seriously by... Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of Norway for her statement, and I now pass the floor to the representative of Tunisia.
Thank you, Madam President. Allow me to thank Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu, High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, for her briefing. Tunisia strongly condemns the use of chemical weapons anywhere, under any circumstances, whatever the motive or justification. We stress the need to hold the perpetrators of such atrocities accountable. The use of toxic chemical agents as weapons is a threat to international peace and security. It is also a violation of the Chemical Weapons Convention and Security Council Resolution 2118. We are strongly committed to the chemical non-proliferation and disarmament architecture, namely the Chemical Weapons Convention, its executive body, and the OPCW. This system is a comprehensive framework based on multilateralism, consensus, and cooperation to end the possession and use of chemical toxins as weapons and irreversibly prevent the proliferation of this type of weapons of mass destruction. Tunisia supports the important technical work of the OPCW within its mandate, which led to the elimination of the declared chemical stockpiles in the Syrian Arab Republic. We took note of the challenges and restrictions that COVID-19 continues to represent for the Technical Secretariat's mandated activities in the Syrian Arab Republic.
We welcome the ongoing cooperation between the Secretariat and the Syrian government, despite current circumstances, by holding the 24th round of consultations between the Declaration Assessment Team and the Syrian government from February 7 until February 25th in Syria. We urge the Syrian government to continue its cooperation and dialogue with the OPCW in a spirit of positive engagement to clarify all outstanding issues and meet its commitments. We stress that allegations of the use of chemical weapons, including by non-state parties, must be investigated in an objective, impartial, independent, and transparent way. In conclusion, we reaffirm that it is incumbent on the international community, in particular the Security Council, to make united and concerted efforts regarding the Syrian chemical dossier. Unity is the best way to address this issue and resolve the Syrian crisis. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you to the representative of Tunisia. I now give the floor to the representative of Vietnam.
I thank you, Madam President, and I would like to thank Deputy for Disarmament Affairs, Nakamitsu, for her statement. I welcome the participation of the permanent representative of Syria and representative of Turkey to this meeting. Madam President, allow me to focus my intervention today on the following 3 points. First and foremost, the importance of continued cooperation between the Syrian Authority and the organizations of the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW. My delegation takes note of the 89 report of the OPCW Director General on the issues of chemical weapons in Syria. We recognize the efforts of the OPCW Secretariat and Syria to continue their engagement given the immediate impact of the COVID-19 pandemic from the last year until now. It is recently illustrated by the organization of the 24th round of consultation between the Declaration Assessment Team, the DET, and the Syrian National Authority during the month of February 2021. And we will appreciate a further update on the result of this round. We are confident that this collaboration is the best way possible to resolve the remaining outstanding issues. We therefore call on the two sides to continue their technical cooperation and consultation in a most constructive manner. We also look forward to the full resumption of the OPCW activities in order to further its cooperation with the Syrian government in this regard. I would like to take this opportunity to reaffirm our need to support to the work of the OPCW, which is mandated to assist member states in the implementation of Chemical Weapon Convention. Second, regarding the alleged use of chemical weapons in Syria, Madam President, my delegation shares the concern of the international community over this matter. And we are also troubled by the information regarding the possession and use of chemical weapons by armed groups. The use of chemical weapons in any form by anyone, anywhere, under any circumstances, and for any reason is a clear violation of international law, and Vietnam strongly condemns this inhuman act. We believe that investigation of alleged uses of chemical weapons in the recurrence. In doing so, it is also important to require a incontestable to be attained through a comprehensive, transparent, and impartial investigative process. Madam President, to conclude, there is without doubt a substantial and long-standing diversion on this matter. For that reason, it is fundamental that all sides engage in a constructive and non-politicized manner with a view to finalize putting an end to this protracted dossier. On mutual goal, our mutual goal is to full implementation of the CWC Resolution 2118. This goal only can be pursued by a joint and united effort of international community in supporting the ongoing cooperation between Syria and the OPCW. Vietnam will continue to engage work of the OPCW Conference of the State Party and follow closely the work of the Executive Council on this matter. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Vietnam for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Kenya.
Thank you very much. Allow me to thank Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu for her updates on the ongoing activities of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, as well as the regular reports on the ongoing reports on the use of chemical weapons. Kenya takes note of the February 24th report of the OPCW. Kenya appreciates that despite the COVID-19 pandemic leading to the postponement of planned deployments and missions, the OPCW has found ways to ensure continuity in the technical consultations with Syria. We welcome the submission by the Syrian Arab Republic to the Council of its 87th monthly report regarding activities on its territory related to the destruction of its chemical weapons and production facilities. We emphasize the need for coordination between Syria and the OPCW to conclude the 19 identified gaps, inconsistencies, and discrepancies that remain unresolved in Syria and ensure a quick conclusion of the investigations. We welcome the deployment of the Declaration Assessment Team to the Syrian Arab Republic in February for the 24th round of consultations and look forward to positive outcomes and updates on this visit. Kenya welcomes the extension of the tripartite agreement for a period of 6 months and takes note of the importance of this agreement in the facilitation of the work of the Secretariat. Kenya believes that the use of chemical weapons anywhere and by anyone constitutes a clear and unacceptable violation of international law. No cause can justify the use of a weapon of mass destruction by any actor under any circumstances. We support credible and transparent investigations that lead to a timely resolution of any accusations of use of these weapons. The Security Council should support all efforts to strengthen the OPCW to ensure full transparency and professionalism in its investigations. Its sensitive and important work is reflected in the expectation of the international community that it will always remain above reproach. We believe that an expeditious closure of investigations into the use of chemical weapons in Syria will allow the Council to more meaningfully help the Syrian people in their quest for a political solution. That political solution is the only way to bring an end to their suffering, impoverishment, and victimization. Kenya stands with the people of Syria by calling for an inclusive Syrian-led and owned dialogue seeking a political resolution reflecting their will. We urge the states involved in one way or another in the conflicts that are afflicting Syria to understand that their actions are visible to the global community. The world expects this council to offer solutions on Syria, and by doing so, today can be set aside for the sake of a people who have suffered too much for too long, and that multilateralism is an effective tool for those people and for peace. Thank you.
I thank the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank High Representative Nakamitsu for her briefing today. I also thank the Director General of the OPCW for his latest monthly report and for the ongoing work of his team to pursue elimination of the Syrian chemical weapons program, despite the limitations imposed by the pandemic. Mr. President, we are here today to discuss yet again Syria's failure over a 7-year period to resolve the outstanding issues in its initial chemical weapons declaration. This is a failure to fulfill the requirements of the OPCW Executive Council decision of the 27th of September 2013, all aspects of which the Security Council decided Syria should comply with in Resolution 2118. As the Council is aware, the 19 unresolved issues are of a serious and substantive nature. The Director General's report makes clear again this month relates to the identified production and/or weaponization of chemical nerve agents at a facility previously declared by the Syrian National Authority as never having been used for this purpose. The OPCW Technical Secretariat has asked Syria to declare the exact types and quantities of chemical agents produced and/or weaponized at the site in response as yet. The ongoing threat to international peace and security posed by the unresolved issues are not hypothetical or academic. In its report of 18th of February, the UN Commission of Inquiry, whom we heard from in the General Assembly on Tuesday, stated that of 38 documented instances of chemical weapons use since the start of the conflict in Syria, 32 met the Commission's standard of proof for attribution to Syrian government forces. We already know that since the start of the conflict, the UN and the OPCW have found the Syrian regime to have used chemical weapons on at least 7 occasions. It is clear that the Syrian regime has retained the capability and willingness to use chemical weapons. This is not a matter of conjecture, but a matter of fact established by investigations of mandated multilateral authorities that apply internationally recognized standards of proof and are accountable to their membership. At the other end of the spectrum, those seeking to call into question the objectivity and undermine the integrity of the OCPW do not appear to observe any standards of proof and do not come to the matter with clean hands. Their interest is in undermining the international institutions and have identified them as responsible for the use of chemical weapons. In this regard, I would like to take the opportunity to remember that one person who sadly died and the several others who were injured following events 3 years ago today, when 2 operatives of the Russian Military Intelligence Service, the GRU, used a Novichok nerve agent on British soil in Salisbury. It is a reminder that we should not lose sight of our responsibility to prevent the proliferation and use of chemical weapons. Finally, we note that both the UN OPCW Joint Investigative Mechanism and the Commission of Inquiry each identified 1 occasion in which ISIL has also used chemical weapons. That is an equally abhorrent act and a breach of international peace and security. We agree with others that any credible and well-evidenced allegations of the use of chemical weapons by such groups should be investigated and attribution and accountability pursued as for any user of chemical weapons. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for her statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of China.
Mr. President, I would like to thank Ms. Nakamitsu for her briefing. China is always opposed to use of chemical weapons by any state, organization, or individual under any circumstances for any purposes. China hopes that OPCW can observe the principles of independence, impartiality, and objectivity and act strictly within the framework of CWC when investigating alleged use of chemical weapons and attributing responsibility. Today, I wish to emphasize 4 points. First, efforts to resolve the issue of Syrian chemical weapons must proceed from facts. Investigations of alleged use of chemical weapons should be science-based and comply with relevant rules and standards. Reliability of the information source, integrity of the evidence chain, and robustness of the analysis all affect the credibility and authority of the report. States parties have the right to question the investigation report. The OPCW Technical Secretariat should present conclusive evidence so as to convince people. Secondly, to resolve the Syrian chemical weapons issue, there should be no double standard. Technical Secretariat should not selectively adopt intelligence and information on alleged use of chemical weapons by parties. The Syrian government has on various occasions provided information on fabrication of incidents of chemical weapons by terror organizations and armed groups. Technical Secretariat should attach importance to such information and include it in the monthly report. Thirdly, to resolve the Syrian chemical weapons issue, there should be no political motivation at play. In past few years, some countries repeatedly pushed OPCW to take action despite lack of conclusive evidence, numerous doubts about the report, and huge differences among parties. Decisions forced through in this way were often full of controversy and hard to implement. They not only eroded mutual trust among states parties, but also hampered the resolution of this issue. Fourthly, to resolve Syrian chemical weapons issue, we must rely on dialogue and cooperation. For some time, the Syrian government has actively collaborated with the OPCW. The two sides have maintained sound communication and cooperation, and in principle agreed to extend relevant cooperation agreement by 6 months. From February the 7th to the 25th, the two sides held the 24th round of technical consultation. The international community should acknowledge the constructive attitude of the Syrian government, encourage OPCW and the Syrian government to continue dialogue and consultation, and to work together to resolve outstanding issues. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of China for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Niger.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu for her briefing. President, since 2013, the United Nations has undertaken a number of efforts to determine accountability in several cases involving the use of chemical weapons in Syria. I note with regret that all of these efforts, which led to the adoption by the Council of Security Council Resolution 2118, did not make it possible to determine who is responsible for these atrocities committed, at least not to everyone's satisfaction. My delegation would like to recall that the Council must show genuine unity in addressing the chemical weapons issue. This unity is absolutely essential because the credibility of the OPCW depends on it, and it depends on how we handle this matter. And indeed, the credibility of the Council is also at stake with the mandate to put an end to threats to international peace and security. I also note that it's important to recognize that divergence of views among members of the Council should yield to a technical analysis of the results of investigations in order to guarantee the integrity of the verification process. My delegation reiterates to the members of the Council to avoid any politicization of the reports and the conclusions, as they could serve as a basis to bring perpetrators to justice. As a member state of the Chemical Weapons Convention, Niger condemns the use of chemical weapons, which in law, wherever it takes place, by whomever, and in whatever circumstances. It is important for all 19 incidents involving the alleged use of chemical weapons by the fact-finding mission and the IIT for further clarification. We call for ongoing dialogue between the OPCW and the Syrian government to find an answer to pending issues. We remain convinced that this will help find an answer in order to consolidate the initial declaration of Syria and to move forward with the work of the DAT. Reinforced cooperation and frank dialogue among the experts of the OPCW and the Syrian government will contribute undoubtedly to achieving this objective. In conclusion, we reiterate our appeal for the OPCW and its technical teams to take account of these allegations, according to which armed terrorist groups in Syria would be in possession of chemical products. And this aspect must not be neglected. And my delegation reiterates its appeal to the UN to pay due attention to these allegations. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Niger for his statement. Mrs. Nakamitsu, do you wish to respond to any points raised by council members at this time, bearing in mind that you all...
Sorry, Mr. President.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I understand the representative of the Russian Federation wanted to take the floor.
Thank you, Chad. Vasily, please.
Благодарю вас.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to comment on a few statements that were made during this meeting. We thank our British colleagues for reminding us about the 3rd anniversary of the tragically notorious Skripal case. It is today indeed the 4th of March. And I'd like to say that that strange case, which your Western partners deem closed, apparently, on the basis of the tragically notorious term that has become part and parcel of our Western partners' vocabulary, namely highly likely. Well, for us, that case is not closed, and we have yet to receive answers to dozens, if not hundreds, of questions that we pose to our British colleagues. You can become acquainted with the list of those questions on the website of the Russian Embassy in the UK, and I strongly recommend those interested in that mysterious case, which is essentially a provocation, to take note of that list of questions. And we, in turn, as I said, during the relevant discussions on topics related to the use of chemical weapons, we will find a way to make those questions public once again, and we will continue seeking answers to those questions. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of Russia for his statement. At this time, is there anyone else who would like Kingdom? Please go ahead.
Thank you, President. May I comment that in response, as part of the investigation into the Salisbury attacks, 250 detectives trawled through more than 11,000 hours of CCTV and 1,400 witness statements. These detectives carried out painstaking and methodical testing who was responsible and the methods that they used. The forensic investigation provided sufficient evidence for the independent Director of Public Prosecutions to bring charges against 2 Russian nationals. Thank you, Madam President.
Ms. Nakamitsu, do you wish to respond to any points raised by council members at this time, bearing in mind that you will make further comments in the consultations that follow this meeting?
Thank you, Madam President. I don't see a need at this stage, and I look forward to further exchanges in the closed session. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nakamitsu. I would like to again draw the attention of speakers to paragraph 22 of note 507, which encourages all participants in council meetings to deliver their statements in 5 minutes or less, in line with the Security Council's commitment to making more effective use of open meetings. I now give the floor to the representative of Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. لقد استمعت باهتمام لإحاطة السيدة إيزومي ناكاميتسو الممثل الأعلى لشؤون نزع السلاح.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, Ms. Nakamitsu, for her statement, and also thank the members of the Security Council for their statements. I was representative of Syria to the OPCW since the Convention on Chemical Weapons in 2013 issue for 7 years. I worked with the Technical Secretariat and the Director General. Let me raise the following points. And I hope that you will be patient with me through. The Syrian Arab Republic has always condemned the use of chemical weapons by whomever, wherever, and in whatever circumstances, and has always denied of chemical weapons. We ratified the convention in 2013 on a voluntary basis, and we destroyed our chemical weapons stockpile as well as production installations in close cooperation with the OPCW and the Technical Secretariat. Unprecedented event which was done in record time and in very difficult circumstances. Syria has always honored its commitments to the convention and has always coordinated with the Technical Secretariat on a number of issues. The monthly reports submitted to the OPCW, the most recent report 87, referred to cooperation activities between Syria and the organization. Turning to the initial declaration by Syria, that declaration was drafted in a very short period of time and under pressure. And that is why Syria answered favorably to the need to cooperate with the Technical Secretariat in 2014 to remedy any inconsistencies in that declaration. That's a right guaranteed under the convention and a principle established within the OPCW. Just by way of reference, to date, 2 decades after the accession to the OPCW, additional information is still being submitted to the initial declaration by the United States. Syria has always exchanged with the DAT any information to resolve pending issues, which led to tangible progress in this area. Allow me to report to the Security Council members that the DAT carried out the 24th cycle of meetings with the national Syrian authorities in the second half of February. All means were put in place to allow the DAT team to carry out its mission. And here I would like to address some technical issues in this discussion which relate to scientific considerations. It would be difficult to, which is why it's difficult to come to a conclusion on these particular issues. It is regrettable to note that some states, when they deal with the issue of the initial declaration, base themselves on bad faith, and they challenge the good intentions of Syria. These states always see the glass half empty. And they do not hesitate to criticize rather than applaud progress already achieved. Dear colleagues, can answer the comments of some, but the production installation was mentioned in the the report of the Director General, a report declared by the Syrian authorities, and this means that this installation does appear in the initial declaration by Syria. With regard to the results of analysis of evidence, this is a scientific matter which requires an in-depth discussion among OPCW experts and national Syrian authorities. I will not delve further into this issue, nature of the initial declaration, and I do not at all intend to turn this meeting into a technical discussion which should take place in The Hague and not here in New York. Since the first allegations regarding the use of chemical weapons, all aware of the names of the states which relayed this information from open sources, and Syria asked the Director General of the OPCW to send a technical secretariat team quickly to determine the veracity behind these allegations. However, that team in its mission did not base itself on the reference document and did not respect the rules dictated in the annex on verification, that is the annex to the Chemical Weapons Convention, and did not respect rules of professionalism and impartiality, which some members of this council refer to. Turning to the sites under question, it did not collect samples, the necessary samples, and did not preserve those samples. That team based itself on information provided by open sources, and that team simply carried out its investigations from a distance and received samples, the source of which is unknown, and discussed or interviewed anonymous witnesses who have ties with terrorist groups, including White Helmets. I would like to ask a question of Ms. Nakamitsu and members of the council who have praised the work of the OPCW. Could they explain one aspect which is strange in the work of the fact-finding mission? That mission has always carried out its investigations on presumed incidents in a record time. I'm referring to incidents provided for which information was provided from open sources, while investigations on incidents denounced by the Syrian government have taken more than 3 years to carry out. To date, there are 100 cases denounced by Syria since 2017, which have still not been the subject of an investigation. And this proves the existence of a clear inconsistency in methodology of the OPCW, which bases itself on selective criteria. The greatest scandal involving the professionalism of the OPCW is the presumed incident in Duma in 2018. One of the experts of the OPCW who was a member of the fact-finding mission, had used some evidence which showed a lack of professionalism on the part of the organization, working based solely on theory and not on scientific evidence. And I would draw your attention to the declaration by the institution Courage on the 8th of February, signed by important individuals, experts and scientists who are well known, in particular Mr. Jose Bustani, who was the first Director General of the OPCWE. Mr. Bustani referred, or at least expressed, his deep concern with regard to the methodology used in carrying out that investigation, and affirmed that he was witness to procedural errors and scientific errors. These are very serious errors. The OPCW, rather than responding to the concerns, tarnished the reputation of that individual, and that same declaration provided a warning regarding the capacity of such possible errors which would be damaging to the reputation of the OPCW, and the report on the incident, the presumed incident at Duma, gives rise to doubts and questions and could undermine the credibility of the entire report of the organization, in particular the report on Rakshehum in 2017. The National Syrian authorities, rather expressing the reservations with regard to used by the fact-finding mission, has always cooperated with that mission and welcomed the team to pursue an investigation on the presumed incident in 2017. That team will carry out another visit on the 22nd of this month, and we will provide all necessary information and witnesses as well, so that the team can carry out its mission. Any failure to carry out the mandate and its lack of professionalism has meant that
the mandate was cancelled, which has led certain Western member states to apply pressure on the OPCW to compel it to create the investigation and identification team. So this is pressure on the technical aspects of the work. With potential legal consequences. And of course, that impinges on the mandate of the Security Council. The identification and investigation team is suffering from the same problems that the fact-finding mission is. It's a team that is deficient in terms of professionalism, which jeopardizes then its conclusions. This team has nonetheless allowed the United States of America and France to promote a draft resolution that was submitted to the Conference of States Parties. the aim of which was to create new pretexts to once again attack Syria and to play into the hands of terrorist organizations in their efforts and in their game of fabricating chemical weapons incidents to serve their political agenda that is hostile. The Syrian Arab Republic invites all member states to exercise vigilance with regard to allegations and to avoid dangerous repercussions that might be caused by their allegations. In conclusion, the Syrian rejects this line, this hostile line, the politicized line, and calls on member states to take an objective approach and to have constructive debates so that the OPCW can carry out its mandate. Which has a technical character, and that will help the organization to keep its credibility and its professionalism. I thank you for your kind attention.
I thank the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Turkey.
Thank you, Madam President. At the outset, I would like to congratulate you on the assumption of your duties as the permanent representative of the United States of America to the United Nations. I also express our congratulations for the U.S. presidency of the Council during this month. I thank High Representative Nakamitsu for her briefing. Madam President, it is unacceptable that the Syrian regime has not yet made a complete and accurate declaration of its chemical weapons program. This constitutes a serious violation of the Chemical Weapons Convention. The 89th monthly report of the OPCW Director General provides yet another record of this alarming situation. There are still 19 outstanding issues regarding Assad regime's chemical weapons declaration. This declaration cannot be considered accurate and complete in accordance with the Chemical Weapons Convention. Among those outstanding issues, one particularly deserves urgent attention by the Council. Contrary to the regime's allegations, all the information